Amnesty hearings like that of Jeffrey Benzine dominate the Truth Commission process at the moment. The South African amnesty law is the most generous one ever offered to perpetrators of political crimes in the world. Receiving amnesty for a crime means that the person may never again be prosecuted criminally or civilly for that crime. Let's take a look at the process.
These are some of the faces of South Africa's political killers. They want the Truth Commission to grant them amnesty. But why should they be set free instead of going to jail? The answer lies in the political settlement that brought us our democracy in 1994.
That negotiated settlement, which was our miracle, would not have happened without the very key, critical element of amnesty.
Over the past 18 months, the Truth Commission's Amnesty Committee has heard 250 applicants tell their stories in hearings. They include the men in uniform who served the previous government and the liberation forces, as well as right-wingers and civilian supporters of the ANC and PAC. Many of them are already in jail for their crimes. Others fear prosecution. The Amnesty Committee makes its decisions according to the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act. This law requires that 4 main criteria be met for amnesty to be granted. Applicants must have been a member of a publicly known political party or organization, liberation movement, or an employee of the state or its security forces. Applicants also have to tell the whole truth about their crime. Technically, therefore, they can lie or hide facts regarding other issues, but have to make a full disclosure of all the relevant facts about the crime they want amnesty for. Applicants must have committed their crimes with a political objective. This means that their motive had to be political. The crime also has to be in proportion to the political objective. Is it, for instance, necessary to kill someone if you want to persuade them to change their mind? Amnesty may not be granted for crimes that were committed for personal gain or spite. But the process that leads to a signed amnesty decision is not a clear-cut one. The Amnesty Committee has to interpret and apply the law. One of the central questions has been, does racism constitute a political motive? Last year, the committee made a number of benchmark decisions in this regard. Jean du Plessis and Cornelius van Wyk belong to a fanatic right-wing organization called the Nasionaal Sosialistische Partisane. They killed 3 people during a robbery attempt to find weapons for their struggle to rid South Africa of inferior races.
My pa het geglo dat die blanke ras is 'n verhewe ras op aarde. En hy het geglo dat alle ander rasse is modderrasse.
The committee refused them amnesty, saying race is not a political motive, and that the Partisane was not a publicly known organization. In 1981, the 4 right-wing Van Straten brothers killed 2 black night watchmen during a robbery at a transport company in Vereniging. They claimed racial hatred as their political motive.
Are you saying to us that you don't distinguish between murder committed through political objective or motivation on the one hand, and murder committed as a result of pure racial hatred?
That's correct, meneer die voorsitter.
Are you serious?
The committee refused them amnesty, again saying that race was not a political motive. Philip Matela, Tami Hlobo and Jeremiah Mokabi applied for amnesty for the killing of 4 white motorists who had ventured into Mashongoville Township near Odendalsrus in 1990. The applicants said they killed them because they thought they were IFP supporters and wanted to protect their community.
You were there to protect, not to attack, not to kill.
Yes, it is so, sir.
Again, the committee refused amnesty, saying this was a case of mob violence falling outside the provisions of the Act. But then this year, the committee made an interesting finding that seemed to deviate slightly from the earlier position on race as a political motive. These 3 men belonged to the AWB and Orde Boerevolk and attacked a bus of black commuters near Durban in 1990, killing 7 passengers. The applicant said this was a revenge attack for an earlier attack on white pedestrians by youths wearing Appler t-shirts. They chose the bus as a target because it was transporting black people. The committee granted amnesty to the 2 junior members of the cell, Adrian Smits and Eugene Marais. They said the conflict among certain sections of the community was to a great degree a racial conflict. This is one of the truisms of the past, which is also often avoided or denied, but which has to be faced squarely. The committee, however, refused amnesty to David Botha, the leader of the cell who ordered the bus attack, saying there was no evidence that he had received instructions to carry it out.
Maybe these interpretations give an indication of what might happen in 2 of the difficult amnesty applications the committee must still decide on: the killers of Chris Hani and the killers of Amy Beale. Janus Wallush is the man who killed Chris Hani. He acted on instruction of Conservative Party MP Clive Darby Lewis. Both are in prison and want amnesty. Darby Lewis, however, will have to prove that he was acting on behalf of his political party and not off his own bat. Is it possible that Wallush might get amnesty, but Darby Lewis not? Another question is whether the racial motive for the killing of Amy Beale by PAC youths may now be accepted as a political motive by the Amnesty Committee. It will be fascinating to see how the Amnesty Committee handles cases like these in the time to come.
Over the past year and a half, the faces on the Amnesty Committee have become well known. We have seen them listen, probe, question and debate in hearings across the country. To date, 53 amnesties have been granted and 39 refused. But the process is not only about hearings. Amnesty applications that do not concern the gross violation of human rights can be processed on paper. These include crimes like the illegal possession of firearms or public violence. Often applications also fall clearly outside of the requirements of the Act and are turned down without a hearing being necessary. To date, 43 amnesties have been granted on paper and almost 2,000 refused. Amnesty hearings are not court cases, but the process is a legal one. All committee members have legal backgrounds and are led by a judge of the Supreme Court. Every hearing also has its posse of lawyers who represent perpetrators, implicated persons, victims and the family of victims. The legal teams for perpetrators from the old police forces and the army are paid for by the taxpayer. This legal team, for instance, represents more than 80 generals and policemen. Many of these lawyers have played an important role in some of the big and complicated applications, but others are responsible for slowing down hearings and forcing adjournments.
Can you now proceed with your witness, please?
Chair, no, we would argue against this. Our argument is that we want to be wholly prepared by investigating these documents, obtaining the cassette tapes, consulting conclusively with our client.
One can't help getting the impression that here you seem to be engaging in some kind of a fishing expedition as well.
We have lost a great deal of time in this matter, and seeing videos and so on can't take a great deal of time, apart from whatever entertainment value they may have.
But some of the delays and adjournments, like here in Bloemfontein recently, must in some cases be blamed on the sometimes less than efficient administrative side of the Amnesty Committee. The South African amnesty process is completely unique, and the form it has taken here has not been tried anywhere else in the world before.
Only in South Africa have they offered an amnesty in a way where they require something in return, where they, of course, require the full truth and limit as to who or what kinds of crimes that amnesty would be given to. Certainly, that's a better model than having a blanket amnesty where it applies to everybody and you get nothing in return, so you're not even quite sure what you're amnestying for.
Our amnesty process is not designed to find perpetrators guilty. nor is it about legal justice or about revenge. It is a process designed to encourage perpetrators to tell their stories truthfully and to give them freedom in return for that truth.
Justice. Okay, it's very difficult. Well, a lot of harm was done to Kredok. He wasn't just my father, but he was the father of Kredok. They were actually the fathers of Kredok. Justice to me would certainly not be justice to Kredok as a whole, okay? But I would like the people who have killed them to come forward so that people could know them. An eye for an eye wouldn't do anyone any good, okay? But at least honesty would be one form of justice, honesty.
Another unique feature of our amnesty process is that perpetrators are not required to show remorse or ask forgiveness to qualify for amnesty.
My impression was that an apology was not necessary and not part of the whole function of this committee.
It's a strange dynamic, and as I speak internationally about this, that's always a surprise if you state that simple fact, that remorse is not required and someone can feel no remorse and get amnesty. However, I agree with those persons here who have explained, and I think it's right, that you can't require that. It doesn't make sense, and if you required it, then of course people would say they were sorry, and you would never know how honest of a dynamic that was.
If you put a gun to somebody's head and they repent, you have two problems. The first is you have no way of knowing if this is true, right? And I would rather have somebody who does not repent and says so than somebody who lies saying they repent in order to gain amnesty, because then you begin to bring deceptions into it from the very start. It's very, very dangerous.
But then there are those who feel the need to ask for forgiveness from those whom they have wronged.
Forgiveness does not come cheaply. It's something that comes deeply from the heart. And I can just ask the people that were involved directly or indirectly and who have been affected by this case to consider forgiving me.
But after all this, the question remains, is it fair to let perpetrators get away with their crimes? Shouldn't they be punished? And does the amnesty process do enough?
So enough for whom? And what is enough? Is enough, would enough be that if you murdered somebody, I would be satisfied if you were executed? Is that enough? Will it be enough that you are incarcerated for 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Enough. What do you mean enough? An eye for an eye? Is that what would satisfy? I don't know. The thing is, I certainly know of a few for whom to have come clean has cost them their marriages. Now, is that enough? And some, maybe not, I don't know. The anguish of it. Do we know? I mean, have we got a calculus to compute? Does it, the pain that someone, the remorse that they get, they not being able to sleep, is it enough? Enough for whom? Enough what? You see, I would say that people don't go off scot-free because in a way what we have come to seem to accept is that the judicial system that we are talking about is not retributive justice. It is restorative justice. We're trying to see how are you going to be able to do something that will redress the balance, that is going to advance healing, not just for the survivors or the victims, but for the perpetrator as well.
The Truth Commission has made it clear that it will never consider blanket amnesty for political crimes. But in the 7 months that now remain for the Commission to finish its work, the Amnesty Committee will have to process more than 1,600 applications in hearings alone. From January, the committee is to be enlarged to 6 panels that will sit at the same time. But given its record up to now, this may be too little, too late. Amnesty hearings in the year 2000 may not be such a far-fetched idea. It's time now to pour a quick cup of tea. But make sure to come back quickly. After the break, we look at the other side of the Truth Commission process and ask, what is in it for the victims? And we tell you a fascinating spy story.